नाम त्वा गणपतिगुं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमं ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पत आनुशृण्वन्नोतिभिः सीदसादनम् ॐ महागणपतये नमः. So, hello everyone, this is the 7th session of Dharmika Samvadaha, and we'll be discussing the topic of Jnana Yoga this time. So, before we get into that, I'll just give a brief overview of what we covered last time. So as everyone is able to see my screen, the last topic we did was Upasana Yoga, and Upasana Yoga is a conditioning program. You have 3 levels of human personality. You have the body, the speech, and the mind. All of these 3 things sometimes act independently of each other. Your thoughts may not necessarily manifest as actions, and so a person who believes one thing and does something else, you would call him a hypocrite. So these kinds of things where your personalities are not in order with each other, that brings about a discord in your entire overall personality, and that creates split personalities. So for instance, if there's a person who is given to telling lies instead of being truthful, then there is one area in his mind where he knows that there is a truth, and there's another area in his mind where he knows that he has to tell a lie, he has to hide the truth. And so that creates an overall conflict in the mind, right? Because if they always say that it is easiest to tell the truth. It is very difficult to tell a lie because you have to remember the lie, whereas the truth is very spontaneous. So when you have this overall conditioning where you bring about oneness, it's called ekagrata. So the purpose of karma yoga was chitta shuddhi, whereas the purpose of upasana yoga is chitta ekagrata, which is oneness and togetherness and unification of the body, speech, and mind level. And the next topic we are looking into is Jnana Yoga. But before we get into that, I just want to hear what are some of your perceptions of Jnana Yoga, or what have you encountered in other teachings? If anyone would like to just volunteer and speak.
Knowledge of the self, the process, like the gaining of the knowledge of the self.
Yes, exactly. So, where have you actually heard some of these things from? What are your sources?
The classes that I attend, classes by Swāmi Paramārthānanda. So.
No wonder, because this is a very precise answer. Usually when you ask somebody else this question, they'll beat around the bush talking about knowledge and you experience and stuff. But you gave the precise answer that this is knowledge of the self. So that's excellent. So yeah.
I'd also read a book by Dayananda Swamiji, the Introduction to Vedānta, that also mentions, that basically Vedānta talks about the knowledge of the self.
I'm not surprised because this is as clear as you can get. So that's wonderful. Thanks. So yes, it's true. Jnana Yoga is a discipline meant for gaining knowledge. It's called Jnāna Prapyartham Yogaḥ. So Jnana is knowledge, Prapyartham means to gain, to acquire, and Yogaḥ is the discipline. So I should have gone into this earlier, but yoga has many translations. Today, some people say yoga is exercise, some people say yoga is some kind of asanas, some people call yoga as a pranayama and so on. But yoga actually comes from the root yuj, which means to unite, to bring together, to integrate. And so anything that brings one thing together with another, that is a yoga. So here Jnana Yoga will obviously bring you the self into the understanding of self-knowledge. It will bring the knowledge of the self to you. And so this is integrating the person with the knowledge. And so then this becomes Jnana Yoga. In Karma Yoga, the actions are integrated with the person. In Upasana Yoga, the various sadhanas and meditations and so on are integrated with the person. So, this is the general connotation of yoga. Now, in some cases, this may not always hold true. For example, Swamiji jokes that the first chapter of the Gita is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga. So the sorrow or the despondency of Arjuna. So the despondency is not a yoga, right? It is a critical condition which you need to solve. So here the term yoga actually refers to the chapter or the thing that is spoken about in that particular chapter. Whereas in other chapters it may mean something else. So depending on the connotation, the meaning of yoga can change as per what the context is. So as Gunjanji pointed out, knowledge of the self is the main subject of Jnana Yoga. And as we discussed last time in brief detail, though, like I said last time, some of the topics that we are going to cover today were spoken about last time through questions and answers and so on. So self-knowledge is equivalent to moksha, and we'll actually unfold some of that later. So now every human pursuit is marked with certain limitations. Anytime you do something and you accomplish a set goal, again there will be another one. So Pujya Swamiji describes accomplishing of goals as putting logs into a fire. So if you have a fireplace and you throw some wood into it, temporarily it appears as though the fire has become snubbed and it has become smaller. But then after a couple of minutes, it'll grow, it'll consume the wood, and it'll even glow brighter than before. So the gain of happiness cannot be acquired through the unending fulfillment of desires. You cannot pursue one desire after the other and expect that to lead to an eternal source of happiness. So the first three purusharthas that you look at, would anyone like to summarize the three purusharthas or the four purusharthas for us? Just to retouch on the old topics.
Four purusharthas are Artha Purushartha, Kama Purushartha, Dharma Purushartha, and Moksha Purushartha.
Okay, very good. Can you explain them briefly?
Yes. So these are four stages of Purushartha one has to pursue. Artha means earning of livelihood and doing the things for your survival and your social activities. Then Kama Purushartha is kind of wishes or your pursuits. Then Dharma Purushartha is acting for the righteous, acting for Dharma, doing your rightful duties. Moksha is the ultimate Purushartha, that is the objective of Atma or Jiva. So one has to reach to the Moksha Purushartha by pursuing other three Purusharthas.
Yes, exactly. So in other words, the end result of all the purusharthas are ultimately only moksha. All the other purusharthas culminate in moksha. And we even discussed this last time, that anytime you accomplish something, what is the common denominator? What is the basic thing that you're looking for? What is that one thing that you wish to accomplish through everything that you accomplish in life? Does anyone recall?
Last session?
Yeah. Okay, you weren't there, right? But whoever else was. So, okay. So basically what we discussed was that through anything that you pursue in life, take any pursuit, all you're looking for ultimately is freedom. So the example that we spoke about is that if you're looking to eat food, then you're simply looking to gain freedom from hunger. If you're looking for wealth, you're looking for freedom from poverty. If you go for friendship, then you're looking for freedom from loneliness. So if you watch a movie, you're looking at freedom from boredom. So anything that you pursue can be defined as in terms of a negative, freedom from something. It is nivritti. Nivritti is a freedom where you are giving something away, and here you're giving away the limitations by gaining something that you want. But as we saw, that every pursuit is marked by limitations. So for instance, if I go and I purchase a house, then I may temporarily feel happy, but then the plumbing work might be required, the basement may start leaking, the roof may be broken, something or the other always takes place. Then you get house insurance, and then you have to get security, and then you have to put these cameras, and then you have to do so many things. Your lawn starts growing, and then you have to worry about that. The weeds have to be taken out. So anything that you pursue, anything that you acquire in life will only give a rise to temporary happiness, but ultimately there will also be a headache involved. So if, the fortunate ones amongst us are very happily married, but then some people may not be. Some people may detest their married life after a couple of years, though that is the person they really wanted to be with originally. So they say that be careful what you wish for, because what you want at a particular time may not give you the same returns in the future. It may give you diminishing returns. Any object that you gain will always end up giving you diminishing returns. If you buy a fancy car, after a point its value starts dropping in your own eyes. Not only the street market value, but even in your own eyes you stop caring about it that much, right? If you buy a brand new Mercedes in the first or second day, you're like so tempted to ride it and go flaunt it around town. but after a couple of weeks, it becomes very routine. So anything that you gain in life will ultimately bring you displeasure in the end, because it's not going to be a permanent source of happiness. So all the three purusharthas, including dharma, when you contribute to society, when you look out for the well-being of others, when you do something that is just dharmic in nature, that too will be associated with many limitations. So the pursuit of moksha is nothing but freeing you from the limitations involved in the previous three purusharthas. Anytime you are faced with limitations, you are a samsari. Samsara, they say samsarati iti samsara. You continue to slip in samsara. It's like a slippery slope. Once you get into it, you keep slipping unless you are building this strong sense of awareness about yourself, about who you are and about your purpose in life. So, a lot of people have a misconception about samsara, where they take samsara to be the world and existing in the world, and this life is samsara. Life is not samsara. A life of constant pursuit, where you pursue something in order to gain happiness, that is samsara. Whereas if you just drift through life and you continue doing your duty as a mere form of joy and as an expression of your own swadharma, then that no longer becomes samsara, because if you have that equipoise of the self, that I have gained self knowledge, then samsara is no longer binding you. You're able to float on it. So samsara is compared to an ocean. While most people are drowning in this ocean, the jnani is able to swim through very carefully. So there's a very beautiful prayer also in the Vedas. It's a suktam. It says, Durgam Devi Gum Sharanamaham Prapadye Sutarasi Tarase Namaha. So with the help of Durga Devi, may I swim through this ocean of samsara. May I drift through from one end to the other without getting wet. So can somebody name the two symbols that are used to represent knowledge in our shastras, Jnana Yoga in particular? What are the two symbolisms that define what we just spoke about? One is an animal or a bird, and the other is a flower. You have to unmute yourself.
Lotus?
Yes, exactly. And one more? It's a bird. Swan, Hamsa.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So that's why see Saraswati Devi, right? She rides a swan. She's called Hamsa Vahini, the one who rides a swan. So the swan is her Vahana. And the lotus and the swan have great significance, because you put anything else in water and it'll get wet. You put your finger in water, it'll get wet. You put paper in water, it'll get wet. But if you look at a lotus leaf, the drop simply sits on it, right? It sits and it rolls off. It doesn't wet the lotus, it rolls off like a ball. Same way, if you look at the feathers of a swan, they don't get wet. The drops simply roll off when it gets off the water. So this is how a jnani is. A person who is firm in jnanam is like a lotus, or he's like a swan, where he's drifting through this ocean of samsara, but he doesn't get wet as a consequence of it. So that is a very recurring symbolism in our shastra about the lotus and the swan. That's why if you see Lakshmi Devi, she sits on a padma, she sits on a lotus, whereas Saraswati Devi sits on a swan. So usually people didn't notice that, but that is the Vedantic symbolism behind it. So now, to become a jnani is a long shot, right? It's a distance away. It's not something that's very immediate to us. When we start off on our pursuit, there's still a long way to go. Right now we've just become introduced to the shastra. We have become acquainted with the varieties of purusharthas that we have and what are the things that we can do. But immediately you find that as you enter this realm of shastric vidya, then you start gaining a sense of samatvam and inner equipoise. And with continued exposure, this keeps building. For the jnani, this equipoise is complete, whereas for us, we can at least measure it in small amounts that it's increasing. So the step, or rather the step from being an ajnanam, a jnani to a jnani is not a leap. It's not a leap from 0 to 100. It's a constant change. It's a constant percentage that keeps on increasing. So even a person who has just gained minimal exposure to this knowledge can, in a sense, talk about the change that he's experiencing. So let me share the screen once again. Yeah. So, Swami Paramārthānanda talks about the serenity prayer. It says, "O Lord, grant me the serenity to accept what cannot be changed in life." So, in life, we are always looking to change things. We are very uncomfortable with the situation around us. Sometimes it may be really hot and you want the weather to change. Or sometimes you may feel really cold and you may want to go to a beach. So the environment is not always favorable to your needs. Not only the environment, but even people around you are not favorable to your needs. Some people may disappoint you. Some people may just stab you in the back. So there are so many issues that we face as we go through life, and there are some things which you can change. There are some things which you cannot. And so the things which cannot be changed in life, we ask Ishvara for serenity, for the complacency, not complacency, but rather a sense of surrender, that I'm okay with the situation around me. It's sthane. If you've heard Swamini Swatma Vedānta ji, she uses this example a lot. It's called sthane, that things are the way they are and I am comfortable with them the way they are. I don't want them to be any different. If it's sunny out there today, that's fine. I'm comfortable with it. If it's raining, that's also okay. If my tire got punctured on the road, it's okay. I have to do what I have to do to change it. But the fact that it happened cannot be changed, and therefore I accept the changes that are happening in my life, which I have no control over. And that serenity also aids in this assimilation of knowledge. And as knowledge continues to get assimilated, the serenity also increases. You are more able to handle the disappointments in life with a grain of salt. The second thing is, there are many things in life which you can change, right? For instance, if you are performing badly at your job, then you can definitely work hard towards it, and you can motivate yourself to move in a certain direction. If you feel that you're ignorant about a subject, you can go and study about it. If you feel that you need to lose weight, you can exercise. You can do so many things. There are many things in your life which are in control, which can be changed by you. And so the second prayer would be to ask Ishvara for courage and for the strength and the motivation, excuse me, to change those things. And thirdly, there are many things which you know can be changed, and there are some things which you know cannot be changed. But at times it becomes difficult to tell the difference, right? Because oftentimes our struggle is trying to change something which we realize ultimately that it cannot be changed. And so we also ask for wisdom, and we ask for that discernment to be able to know what I have control over and what I have to submit myself to. And so when we keep this prayer in our mind, we gain this samatma, which is an equipoise and a balance. And this develops with a steady exposure to Shastra. So, any questions on this so far? No?
No.
Okay. So, now we go to the next one. Okay, so let's touch upon the pramanas, or rather the topic of pramana. So, anytime you have to gain knowledge of something, there are four things involved. The first is the object that you have to gain knowledge of. The second is the knowledge. The third is the knower. And the fourth is a means of knowledge that you use to connect these three. So prameya is the object of knowledge. For instance, if I'm looking at a pot, so the pot is the object of knowledge. Prama is the knowledge of the pot, that there is a pot is a prama. The pramata is the knower, that there is a person who knows the pot, that is the pramata. And finally, you have a means of knowledge which connects the subject to the object. So in case of the pot, can you tell us what the pramana would be?
Could you please repeat the question? In case of a pot?
So when you have to gain knowledge of the pot, what pramana do you use?
Senses, like your Gyanendriyas?
Yeah, you can correct. You use either your hands to feel it or you use your eyes to see it, right? So you can use the two pramanas you have. So now that we are on the topic, a group exercise where can you name all the 6 pramanas that we have in detail? Just like name it and describe them briefly.
Eyes to see the things in actual. Ears to hear about the proofs or the evidences. By feeling or touching something so that you can have a feel. Fifth one would be. Sixth one would be your. Intellectual wisdom.
So, okay, so these you're describing are the pratyaksha pramanam, right? Pratyaksha pramanam are the direct sensory perception, direct sensory perception. So one you have is shrotra, which is the ears, the sense of hearing. Second is the chakshu, which is the sight. Third is the twach, which is the, you feel, right, with your skin. The fourth is you have the grana, which is the nose. You're able to smell. And then you also have the jiva, which is the tongue, and you're able to taste. So these are the five Jnanendriyas, and these five together form something called pratyaksha pramanam. So this is a direct sensory perception. When you go into the world and you look around you, or you smell things and so on, this is all the knowledge of the world around you is gained through direct sensory perception. Now, for example, if you have a stomach ache, right, that is also known to you through a means of knowledge. And here, when the stomach aches, it is a sense of touch that is actually telling you that, when something presses against your stomach, when there's acidity, then that is burning against the inner lining, the skin inside, the lining of your stomach. And so that is also involved with the sense of touch. And then there are certain pramanas where, if you're hungry and so on, these are also sensations that are physiological, that manifest in the body. But again, it manifests inside through the sense of touch. So there's a very interesting observation over here that out of the five pratyaksha pramanas that we have, the five direct sensory perceptions, four of them are located on the head, right? Your eyes are on the head, your tongue is on the head, your nose is on the head, and your ears are on the head. Whereas the fifth one is located all over the body, which is your skin. So you can touch something with your skin, and you can tell, if you touch something with your foot, you can tell the temperature, you can tell the roughness. So the skin can tell you whether something is smooth or rough, hot or cold, and soft or solid, right? These are the six things that you can tell with the sense of your touch. So the four sensory organs are located on your head, and the fifth one is all over the body. That is an interesting thing that I heard from Swamiji earlier. So these five together form the pratyaksha pramanam. Now, so pratyaksha pramanam is one category. The second category, does anybody remember anumana, inference?
Yes.
Okay, so then we have inference. So which is where there is smoke, there is fire. I don't directly look at the fire, and yet I can infer that there is fire because I see smoke. But the uniqueness of anumana pramanam is that the opposite does not hold true. So it is possible that I can infer fire by seeing smoke, but if I see fire itself, there is no proof that there is smoke, because there may be fire which is without smoke, and so you cannot infer the opposite. And so this is called hetu. But we'll get into that again in some other chapter in more detail. But right now, what's important about anumana pramana is it is one directional. It is unidirectional. You can infer the effect by the cause, but or rather you can infer the cause by the effect, but not the effect by the cause. So that is one thing to keep in mind. Then you have the other pramana, which is called arthapatti. Arthapatti is presumption. So it is a multiple set of inferences. So that is something we spoke about, and we can revise this again if you like, but we covered it in the second talk. The third one you have is anupalabdhi. So you gain knowledge through the absence of something. So, if I say I'm not holding a pot, there are different cognitive actions that are taking place. First is, if I approach you and I say I'm not holding a pot, you visualize a pot in your mind. Then your eyes look at what I'm holding and you see that there is not a pot. And then the lack of superimposition of the pot upon your projected reality in the mind gives you the rise of the inference that there is no pot. And so, for us, this process is instantaneous because we have been so trained and conditioned to be able to tell such things. But in truth, your mind actually performs three different operations to infer the absence of something. So this is anupalabdhi, and then you have anumana. So not anumana, sorry. You have a comparison, upama, it's called. So, if you recall the example that if everybody has seen a buffalo in India, and then if you come to America and then if I tell you that there is an animal called a bison which looks like a buffalo, but it has a lot of hair. And so now you come over here and you look at this creature and it looks to you like a buffalo, but it also looks like a very hairy buffalo. So then you recognize it as a bison. And now here also there are multiple things that are taking place. The first is that you superimpose a picture of a buffalo. Second is you superimpose the picture of hair. You place the hair on top of the buffalo and then you identify that as a bison based on what I previously told you. So again, for the human mind, this works almost instantaneously, but this process is actually taking place. and then that forms a new subset of knowledge and so on. But those are details which we probably don't need to go over in this introductory talk. So these are the 5 basic pramanas. The 6th pramana we have is Shabda Pramana, and this is Shastra Pramana. So in order to know the world, we are used to the other 5 pramanas, but Shabda Pramana, which is going to give you the knowledge of the self, can only come from Shastra. So if you look at, are you able to see the screen? Okay, you are. So if you look at the 4 connections, you have Prameya, Prama, Pramata, and Pramana. None of these can really tell you about the self, because here the Prameya is the object of knowledge, which is the self. Prama is the self-knowledge, which is again knowledge of the self. Pramata is a knower, which is again the self. And Pramana is a means of knowledge, which is again to know the self. So here the object of knowledge is the self, and the knower is also the self, right? So to know yourself, you cannot really use one of these sense organs. You cannot use the Jnanendriyas. You cannot use inference. How can I infer myself by the self? Because I know that I exist. As far as knowing that I exist, you don't need a means of knowledge for that. That is immediate. That is direct. Nobody, no Shastra in the world needs to tell me that I exist. But what I need Shastra for is to know what I am, who I am. Existence is a given. But to know that I exist versus to know that I am existence, that is what you need Shastra for. I know that I'm aware, but to know that I'm awareness, that is what Shastra is for. I know that I'm limited, right, as a body, mind, sense complex, but to know that I am limitlessness, that is what Shastra is for. And so this 6th pramana is called the Shastra Pramana or Shabda Pramana or Shruti Pramana. And it is compared to a mirror. It's called Shastra Darpana. Darpana is a mirror. So when you look into the Shastra, when you look into the mirror, you can see your eyes. But when you're looking at the world, you cannot see your eyes, right? When you look at the world, you're able to see the whole world around you, and the image is projected onto your retina, and the retina sends these electronic signals, electromagnetic signals to the brain, and the brain processes it through the neuronic activities and so on. And so that is how you're able to look at the world around you. But in order to see the eyes, you need to look into a mirror. In the same way, in order to know the self, you're supposed to look into the mirror of the Shastra, and that's why it's called a Shastra Darpana. So any discussions on this? Hello? Okay, we'll go on to the next slide. So now you have 3 things that are involved in Jnana Yoga. The first is Shravanam, then you have Mananam, and finally you have Nididhyasanam. So would anyone like to talk about their understanding of these 3 things? Just an overview. We'll go into details afterwards.
Shravanam, as a general Sanskrit word, we understand Shravanam as listening to something when someone's speaking, or sensing something from your Shravanendriyas. Mananam is, when you remember something or recall something, you keep on doing dhyana. What was the third one?
Nididhyasanam. But actually not exactly. This is not exactly correct, because Shravana is simply it's a very technical term where, yes, you're correct so far as saying that Shravana is related to the sense of hearing. So usually this teaching has been passed on to us through listening, right? That is a traditional way to learn, oral tradition. That's the Vedic tradition. So the Guru unfolds the teachings of the Vedas, and this is a very important part to understand something, because the entire tradition has been a Karna Parampara. It has been passed through oral tradition. The Vedas themselves were written down much later, but the knowledge of the Vedas had always existed orally. So a lot of these Max Muller type people, they will date the Vedas. They will say that the Rig Veda is 1700 BC, 1900 BC, 2400 BC. All of these estimates are completely wrong, because if I pass something down orally for generations together, and then one day the technology of writing develops, and then people started writing on palm leaves, right? And so then it became a written parampara, and then the Vedas were hard-coded in words, and then they were also passed down orally as well as through words, through written words. but primarily it is a Shabda Pramanam, and that's why the Vedas were unfolded through teaching. Now today we have the comfort of publishers. We have people printing presses who are able to publish books for us. But initially we didn't have that technology. And so suppose if I had to give a book to somebody else, like I'm talking about thousands of years back, then you had to literally write it down, and not with pen and paper, but on palm leaves. And that took a very, very long time. And so usually when people taught, they taught it orally. So Shravanam is actually this oral tradition where you're listening to the teachings of the Vedas unfolded by the Guru. The second thing that's important to know is Shastra is called Shabda Pramanam, but here the Shabda is only a Pramanam when it is unfolded by the Guru. Shastra becomes a Pramanam only when it is unfolded by the Guru Mukham, by the mouth of the Guru, through the mouth of the Guru. And so this is what Shastra Pramanam is. Now a person cannot go to the marketplace and buy a copy of Vedas. I'm asked this question so many times by people that where can I get the Vedas? Where can I buy the Vedas from? And I have no answer for that, because if I tell a person where to buy the Vedas, so they'll read it and they'll get confused. At the same time, you never hand over a teaching of the Shastra until somebody asks for it. So, you're kind of in a catch-22 situation. And so I usually leave these questions unanswered. I don't even address them. One does not go and just simply buy the scriptures by themselves. You either buy a commentary of your Guru, either it will be a written commentary or it will be a verbal commentary. So this commentary, where the entire teaching of the Shastras unfolded in a very meticulous pattern, taking into consideration all the prakriyas, the methodologies that are required in order for you to assimilate this knowledge well and to understand it well, that is Shravanam. So, going back to our previous example of experience, we are used to seeing this entire life experientially, right? We are used to understanding and gaining knowledge through experience. So, for example, Swamiji says that if you read about the Niagara Falls in a textbook or in a I don't know, on Discovery Channel, if you see it, you still need to go and witness it for yourself in order to gain the experience of Niagara Falls, right? So when you read something, then it is pending an experience which is to follow. So usually this is I would like bold what I'm saying right now. It's very important that people somehow look at self-knowledge as an experience. So Shastra talks about the self, and now people will think that, okay, Shastra says you are Satyam Jnanam Anantam. Let me get into meditation and let me experience that. That is not the correct way. The knowledge of the self cannot be experienced, because the self is all that there is, right? If you are Satyam, you are this entire Jagat, you cannot experience yourself. And so it is very important that the Guru, when he is giving you this teaching through the Shravanam, he talks about the self not being experiential. The self-knowledge is direct knowledge that is gained from the Shastra through Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam. So this is what Shravanam is. The second thing is that what we are doing right now, Dilip Bhai posted a good comment that water cannot experience its wetness, right? Wetness is the very Swarupa, the very nature, the very fundamental of water. Same way, fire cannot experience its heat, because heat is the very Swarupa of fire. Ice cannot experience its cold, because cold is the very Swarupa of ice. Same way, Satyam Jnanam Anantam is the Swarupa of the self, and you cannot experience it because you are the self. You can only experience what you are not. So if there is something that is out there in the world for me to experience, then yes, that knowledge can be gained through direct sensory perception. But the self itself cannot be experienced, because I am the self. There's no experience that's gained around it. We'll get into that detail also further in Tattvabodha. So Shravanam is this meticulous unfolding of the knowledge with all these caveats that are given. And that's why you cannot just pick up a verse from the Vedas, like take the Upanishads, right? They say that the one who knows the self does not know the self. The one who knows Brahman does not know Brahman. The one who does not know Brahman also does not know Brahman. But the one who knows Brahman and does not know Brahman is the one who actually knows Brahman. So if a person reads this, he's going to get completely confused, right? Because the Guru has to unfold the meaning of this. So that's why Shastra is always done through Shravanam, through the teaching of the Guru. It's never just simply a direct book that is picked up. Yes, you can pick up commentaries by your Guru, but you cannot pick up the original Shastra and the original verses without a commentary. You need that commentary. So that is what Shravanam is. The second thing is that Shravanam also deconditions your mind about this experiential thing versus the direct knowledge part. And the third part is that usually when the Guru is teaching, you leave, suppose there is something that you disagree with, like not disagree, but something you may not understand, then you should always give the benefit of the doubt to the Guru and hold it till the end of the Shravanam, until you ask the question. So this is what we are having is a discussion session, because we are all students. I'm a student, you're a student, we're all students. So we can discuss and we can talk in between and we can discuss these concepts. But when you're attending the teachings of the Guru, like Swāmi Paramārthānanda ji and so on, then you hold that question, you keep it in your mind, and you defer it in the end, because most likely the answer may come in the later part of the lecture. So he may say something in the beginning, it may confuse you, but it is very likely that he will cover it later on in the same lecture itself. And so you always defer your questions till the end in terms of discussing with these gurus, in terms of doing Shravana with the gurus. So that is one important feature that Swamiji also mentioned. When you talk about Mananam, okay, so you've attended a pravachan, right? You've attended a lecture, but you also may have a lot of doubts that arise from it. So my guru said so and so, but I'm not completely understanding this. So how do I actually make sense of it? And so that process of making sense of what you've heard, to make your knowledge doubt-free, to make it very clear, that clarity of knowledge is the process of Mananam. And so, if you have a question and answer session with the guru, that becomes a Mananam, because you've already understood and you already heard about the topic that is being discussed, but now you need to clear all sorts of intellectual issues that are related to it. And so Swamiji calls this an unfolding of knots. Your brain is in a knot and you need to untangle it. So this untangling process where all the knowledge becomes consistent and understandable to you, that is Mananam. And finally, can anyone talk about Nididhyasanan? Because that is probably the most important part. Okay, I guess I'll talk about it. So Nididhyasanan is habitual error removal. And this is a very unique way in which only Swami Paramārthānanda ji has defined it, because in all my experience in life, I have not come across such a beautiful definition. So what if I have understood the knowledge of the self? I understand that Brahman is Satyam, Jnānam, Anantam, I am the cause of the entire universe, all that there is a manifestation of me. But what does that really do? And yes, Shobha Aunty gave the answer. It's internalizing and practicing is Nididhyasanan. So this knowledge has to be internalized, it has to be assimilated. In fact, in our tradition, we never speak about knowledge that is not assimilated. Anything that is not assimilated is simply information. It is only information that is lying somewhere in the back of your mind. But when it becomes firm, when it becomes your reality, when it becomes the way in which you see life, it becomes your vision. That is what knowledge is. So knowledge is something that is always relational. It is always in relationship to something else that you know. Knowledge cannot be an independent construct that is sitting somewhere in your mind. It has to relate to everything else. And so when this knowledge of Brahman relates to your entire life and everything that you do, and all the perceptions that you built around you are discarded for this ultimate reality to take place, that is what Nididhyasanan is. So we are conditioned for so many lifetimes, not just this life. Yeah, you have the marketing products around you that you need the car to be happy, and you need an SUV, and you need to go camping, and you need to do all these things. Happiness itself has been imposed upon you by through actions, right? And then you have your entire society around you which conditions you to feel a certain way, that you are a human being, you are limited, you are a woman, you need to fight for this, you need to fight for that, and all these various what do you call vasanas continue to build up on you, not only this life but through countless lifetimes. You so strongly internalize that you are a human being. You so strongly learned to identify with your body. If your body is of a certain stature, you may feel insecure about it. If your voice may be a certain way, you may feel insecure about it. There are so many insecurities that we build around the limited self. The real self is not the limited self. So when the limited self, the limited identity is replaced by the real I, which is Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, then that is when the process of Jnanam has taken place. But until then, it is only information that has a lot of pratibandhakas in the way. Pratibandhakas are obstacles. Obstacles could be in terms of ragas and dveshas and different vasanas and the negative samskaras that you carried in your life. All the wrong impressions that you've carried so far are the pratibandhakas. These impressions are removed through the knowledge of the self, but not quite. Knowledge of the self is the end result. First you need to approach karma yoga. First, then you need to do upasanas, and then finally you need to come towards knowledge, right? This is not a linear process. All of them need to be done together, but you always start as a karma yogi. right from your young age, when you're 7 years old, 8 years old, and you get into the whole Upanayanam, and you are indoctrinated into the Vedic discipline. That is your start of Karma Yoga. That is when you got into the discipline of being a Karma Yogi, and slowly you're quelling the ragas and the dveshas and the various vasanas that you have, and you're preparing your mind and you're removing the obstacles that will get in the way of self-knowledge. So the to retrace back our steps, the entire Vedic tradition is to bring you to the level to assimilate jnana. Jnanam ultimately is what liberates you, but karma yoga and all will take you to the level where you're able to assimilate this jnana perfectly. So in the process of Nididhyasanan, all you're doing is you're removing your habitual errors. And here the error is of taking yourself to be what you are not. If you take yourself to be a limited, restricted being, you will always be restricted, because if you're identifying with the body, there's no way that your body will ever be perfect. The very fact that you're born, the clock starts ticking, and then one day you'll die, right? Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. So your Jara is old age, Vyadhi is sickness, and Mrityu is death. These three things are inescapable once you're born. And so if you identify with the limited, then you will always feel limited. But if you identify with the limitless self, then you will always acquire that quality of the self, which is nothing but you. And so when you internalize them and when you are able to assimilate this vidya perfectly, that is the process of Nididhyasana. You constantly contemplate upon it. After you listen to a teaching, don't switch Vedanta on and off. Don't have a Vedanta time and then a secular time, because Vedanta has to pervade your entire life. Whatever you do is through the vision of the self, through the vision of the fact that I am Brahman, and everything else is nothing but a role that I play. So a way to really put into words what it means to remove your habitual errors is that, let us say you live in a certain place and you wake up every day and you look at the ceiling. It is familiar to you. You don't have to think about it, right, when you woke up. But suppose tomorrow you go out of town and you wake up in a strange room. It'll take you 3 or 4 seconds to hit you that, okay, I'm not in my home anymore, I'm somewhere else. But if you live there for a few days, again that will become familiar to you, right? So that also is a process of habitual error removing, right? You're habituated to wake up in a certain place, and therefore that lingers on for a while. Same way we are habituated to identify with what we are not, and that will continue to linger. And the process of Nididhyasana removes this lingering, and it replaces the small I with the real I, which is you, but the self. So Shubhaji has asked a question about why only Shastras, what makes them the ultimate knowledge. So when we talk about the Shastras, we are discussing mainly the Vedas and the entire teaching tradition that is related to the Vedas. So if you look at knowledge of the self, there's no other pramana, right? There's no other pramana which can reach it. If you whether you look at pratyaksha pramana, anumana pramana, and so on, none of these help you gain the knowledge of the self, because the pramanas are always lacking. The pramanas are always defined by the object and the subject. But over here, the subject is I, the object is also I, and therefore I need a special means of knowledge to connect the subject to the object, which is the very self. And so the only thing which can connect the self to the self, being the very self, is knowledge, that I am that very self. So here the knowledge requires nothing but a revelation. It's an unfolding of the teaching of the self alone. So if I have to look at the sky and I have to infer that it is blue, there has to be a blue sky that is away from me. There has to be a person like I who's inferring the blue sky. There has to be the color of the sky, the quality of the sky, the distance between myself and the sky, whether I'm in a closed room or I'm in the open air, and so on. So all these factors are involved. Between the subject and the object, there can be many divisions, and there can be many things which bring you to that knowledge. But between the knowledge of I being the subject and the knowledge of I being the object, there is no distance. This distance is nothing but in terms of ignorance, right? Between a subject and the object, there can be a distance in terms of space, and there can be a distance in terms of time. But if I am the subject and I'm also the object, there is no distance in space, there is no distance in time. The only distance over here is a distance in ignorance. I am distanced from the knowledge because of ignorance. And so the whole purpose of Shastra is to remove the ignorance that I am taking myself to be what I am not, whereas this is what I really am. And so that is why the Shastra can only be the only means of knowledge, because the only way to remove ignorance is through knowledge. And the knowledge comes here in the form of the teaching of the Guru and the Shastra. So I'm not sure if, is that what you were asking? Okay. So any discussions on this topic? We can actually go deeper into Jnanam if anyone wants to talk. Still have 15 minutes. Acha, you want to talk? Okay, so Dilip Bhai has expressed a desire to discuss more. So, what topic related to Jnanam would you like to cover? Jnanis. Okay, so the only difference between an Ajnani and a Jnani will be what they identify with, right? The Ajnani is an Ajnani because he is ignorant. What he is ignorant of is the nature of the self. This ignorance is a distance that is keeping him from assimilating, right? And the ignorance could be as a result of multiple things. First of all, you could have a lot of pratibandhakas, which are obstacles in the way. All obstacles over here could be of different categories. You may have physical obstacles, which are because of your karma. So you could be born in a family where the knowledge of the self is not really supported. You could be born in a non-Vedic household. You could be born in one of those super secular families where they don't really care much about Shastra and they reject all sorts of worship and so on. So if you are born in a certain environment, that is also pratibandhaka, an obstacle that is distancing you from the knowledge of the self, right? So that is like a physical sort of conditional situational pratibandhaka. Now it is also possible that you may be born in the most favorable environment. You may be born in a very hardcore, devoted Vedic family where everybody does puja part whole day and you are exposed continuously to this whole tradition and to the wisdom. You may have the best guru in front of you. For example, I know one guy who literally lives 10 minutes away from the Naikati ashram in near Coimbatore, AVG. And still he has never visited because he doesn't care for Vedanta. And so sometimes even the situation may be favorable to you, but your mental condition may not be supportive. And so you need to do a lot of work even on your mind and need to remove the pratibandhakas. So uh, these are the obstacles which get in the way of Jnana. Okay, so you want to discuss about Avatara and relating it to Jnani. This is complicated and it will probably require 20 full minutes, I guess. But okay, let's discuss this in more detail. What is an avatara? The difference between a jiva and avatara. Can anybody just unmute their mic and give us just throw in your ideas about what an avatara is? Then we can talk more about it in detail.
Well, this is the most confusing thing when.
Yeah. So, what are some of your ideas about an avatara? What have you heard or picked up from?
I mean, it is highly confusing topic and would definitely need your insights.
Okay, so let's look at three things over here. We have an Ajnani, a total Ajnani, like, I guess all of us are Ajnanis over here, I'm assuming. Maybe someone might be Ajnani, but I don't know. So, for the sake of argument, let's suppose that most of us around here are Ajnanis. We are completely ignorant of the self. Now, having heard about the self and knowing about the self through your teachers and being able to talk about it is not the same as Jnanam, right? So it has to be assimilated. So what happens? Let's look at the life cycle of an Ajnani. I am born as an Ajnani because of my karma. My karma gives me, it fructifies in the form of a body, physical body. It fructifies in the form of my mental conditions, and it fructifies in the form of my environmental conditions. I'm born with a starting capital of Ajnanam, and I'm born also with a starting capital of certain Jnanam and certain attributes which may either support or go against what I want to learn. Now, at the end of my life, what is going to happen is that the physical body falls, it's going to be burnt, and the Sukshma Sharira, which we'll cover these topics later on, but the Sukshma Sharira, which is a subtle body, that is what reincarnates, right? So for the Ajnani, again, the karma will give rise to a new body. And again, that new body will fall and it will give rise to a third body and fourth body. And this has been going on for countless life cycles. For the Jnani, he has gained knowledge of the self. The self-knowledge kills the root cause of everything, which is ignorance. Ignorance is what gives rise to the whole karta and bhokta bhava. Bhava is uh, the attitude with which you perceive things. So that I am the karta and I am the bhokta goes away when you realize that I am the all-pervading non-doing self. the actionless self. And so the Jivan Mukta, the person who has gained this knowledge and has got rid of the ignorance of the self, is a Jivan Mukta. The Jivan Mukta at the end of his life has no karmic baggage, because you can only have karma if you identify with your actions. But the fact that I no longer identify with the actions has set me free. And so that freedom, when the physical body dies, the Sukshma Sharira also dissolves in the universe, and the Jnani is nothing but the whole Jagat, Brahman. Whatever is there is the Jnani, right? Now the Jnani will not be born again, because you can only be born as a result of your karmas. But if you have disassociated with your actions themselves, then there is no birth for you, because you no longer identify with the actions you performed. So now we look at an avatar, and for all practical purposes, it's impossible to differentiate between a Jnani and Avatara, because they say avatarati iti avataraha, the one who gracefully descends is an Avatara, whereas a Jiva plummets onto the earthly realm, the worldly realm, as a result of his karmas, while the Avatara chooses to descend gracefully in order to solve a particular predicament that you will have in society, right? So Bhagavan says in the Gita, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bharata abhyuktanam dharmasya sadatmanam sajatyam paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samstharpanathaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So, the way to protect dharma, the most important way to protect dharma is to protect the dharmi, right? The dharmi is the person who is responsible for dharma, who performs acts of dharma. And so whenever the sadhus, whenever the good people are in trouble, in a predicament, the avatara will descend. But here, why will he descend? The avatara is not a jiva. Avatara is a jnani from birth, right? He is not born as a result of his karma, because he is already free. So the reason the avatara will be born is because people will pray for it. Think about it this way. My physical body is a result of my karmas, right? Action, every karma is an action, every action has a result. The fact that I have performed a set of karmas through countless lifetimes is what is giving rise to this physical body, this mind, and this worldly situation that is there around me. But for the avatara that is free from karmas, where does his physical body come from? His so-called apparent physical body, where does it come from? It has to come from karma, right? So this is a paradox. The body of the avatara has to come as a result of karma, because anything that is born is only a result of an action. But at the same time, the avatara is free of action. So then the body comes from the prayers, the collective, the sadhanas, and the collective prayers of all the jivas that are there in that area. So, if you are in a very tough predicament, in a very difficult situation, then the first thing a dharmic society will do is to pray to Ishwara, and at the same time try to solve the problem. So all these prayers will give rise to the physical body of the avatara. All the wishes, the desires of all the jivas to be set free from a problem is what gives rise to the physical body of the avatara. But the avatara does not have a sukshma sharira, right? The sukshma don't worry if you have not covered this topic. This is only for the Vedantins who actually gone over the sukshma sharira and so on. We'll cover that after 4 talks, 4 or 5, 4 talks, yeah. So the avatara does not have a sukshma sharira. The jiva does. The avatara sukshma sharira is nothing but the entire world. Whatever is there, the collective sukshma shariras of the entire jagat is the avatara sukshma sharira. This is what we call Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha is the sum total of all the sukshma shariras in this jagat. So that is why, when in the chapter 13 of the Gita, chapter 11, when Krishna Bhagavan shows his Virat Roop to Arjun, Arjun gets freaked out, because what Krishna Bhagavan is showing is that this reality that you perceive, this small physical reality in front of you, is not really I. I am the entire totality of whatever is there around you, the whole Virat world, the whole Virat as well as the whole Hiranyagarbha's being. And so Arjuna cannot handle that, because whatever he sees all the 3 times simultaneously. He sees the entire Jagat simultaneously. He sees people living and dead simultaneously, and therefore it freaks him out. And that's why he tells Bhagavan that, Bhagavan, please go back to your pleasing form, your pleasant form, because I cannot take this form. It's too much for me to handle. And so the avatara has a physical body like any of us, which is a manifestation of the collective prarabdha, of the collective agami karmas of all the jivas around him. And the sukshma sharira of the avatara is a manifestation of nothing. It is the whole jagat. So the Sukshma Sharira is only illumined by consciousness. So that is the Avatara. Is the distinction between a Jnani and Avatara clear? The Jnani is somebody who is born as an Ajnani, but he gains Jnanam, he gains Jnana Prapti in this Janma. An Avatara is someone who's born as a Jnani. I want to actually give an example over here, which is it's very comical. So there is Ved Vyasa and his son Shukacharya. Shukacharya was considered an avatar of Shiva. Whereas, so, one thing about our Shastra is that if you read a particular text, then it will glorify the hero of that text. If you read another event, it will glorify that one. And everybody else will be subservient, acting as a supporting foil to that individual. So, for instance, if you read the Shiv Purana, then it shows that all the Bhagwans like Vishnu and all are worshipping Shiva. If you read the Vishnu Purana, then it will show that Shiva is worshipping Vishnu. So ultimately, Ishvara is only one reality, right? But these are different names and forms that you give to Ishvara. You call him Vishnu, Shiva, whatever. So this particular story, though we all know that Ved Vyasa is an avatar of Vishnu, in this particular story, we are glorifying the avatar of Shiva called Shukacharya. So Ved Vyasa and Shukacharya are walking by a river. They are passing through. And in the river, you see these women that they are bathing. So in those days, we didn't have bathrooms and we didn't have like places where we can shower. So people just used to bathe in the river. And so these women were pretty much not wearing clothes, and they were bathing in the river. And Shukacharya passes by first, and they continue bathing. They don't cover themselves or anything. They just continue bathing very freely. And Shukacharya goes to the other end, and he's out. And then Ved Vyasa follows. But when he passes by, the women like Dubko Marufai in the water, they cover themselves. So they get like really freaked out when Ved Vyasa passes by. So, when Vyasa gets to the other side, he's very perplexed that, Shukacharya, what is this? When you passed by, the women did not mean to cover themselves. But when I passed by, suddenly they felt insecure about this. Like, I had no intentions of looking at them also. So, the explanation here is that Ved Vyasa became a Jnani in this birth, in the current birth. And so when Ved Vyasa was an Ajnani, and therefore he still had a set of Prarabdha Karma alive, right? The Prarabdha Karma continued to allow his body to function. Now, what if it was in his Prarabdha Karma to turn his head or turn his neck the other way, and then he would see the women, right? And they would be embarrassed. And so it is possible that the Jnani's Prarabdha Karma may make him look at the women like just like that as a turn. But the fact that Shukacharya was an Avatara, therefore he had no Prarabdha Karma that was governing him. His actions were completely free-willed, and they were nothing but a result of the collective Prarabdha of everybody else around that Avatara. So is that kind of clear? The distinction between a Jnani and Avatara. Avatara is basically a born Jnani, whereas a Jnani gains Jnana with this Janma. That's all. Cool.
Yes.
So let's throw in a group question. Can anyone summarize the different types of yogas that we covered? Because this was the second last chapter. There's one more, Bhakti Yoga, next time. And Bhakti Yoga will be the last topic for introduction to the topics of Dharma, and then we'll get into the Tattva Buddha talks. So yeah, so just briefly talk about it. Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, and Jnana Yoga, so that we can connect them together. Let's connect things together now, before we move on. Okay, let somebody else talk then. Abhijit, how about you, or Unnati, or whoever? Anyone wants to talk?
Karma, as we have discussed many a times, and as a summary and as well as a detailed lecture, karma is your daily actions that you perform on a day-to-day basis, which are related to the purushartha, which is ultimate actions that you perform. For example, related to dharma or any sort of actions comes under karma.
Okay. So do you remember the 5 Pancha karmas?
Um, not exactly.
Mahayagnas. So
Yeah.
remember Devi Yagna? Okay.
I
Go
think there
ahead.
were Ram Yagna, Pitri Yagna, Manushya Yagna, Bhoot Yagna, and one more,
Devi Yagna.
Dev Yagna.
Perfect. So very good. Then does anyone recall? I'm just like throwing these questions so that we can have a good recollection of whatever you covered, because now we're going to slowly switch over the topics. The 7 different categories of Shastras that we covered. So first we start with Shruti, right? The Vedas. Yeah, so Dilip Bhai is writing the answers. Shruti, correct. Smriti, yes. Itihasas, Puranas. Two more. You have the Prakarana Granthas and then you also have the Bhashyas. So does anyone know the distinction between Shruti and Smriti? Just one distinction, very important one. Yeah, but nobody else can hear. Dilip Bhai is saying, so doesn't even want to like discuss it because I'm just getting the comments, but nobody else can hear. So this is being broadcast. Gunjanji, how about you?
No, I don't exactly remember.
Okay.
Like,
So Shruti is revealed knowledge, right? It is directly intuited by the rishis, whereas Smriti is recalled. So Shruti is a direct revelation. It is heard, so to speak, not literally heard through the ears, but heard through the mind's ear, right? Because it is completely intuited. Now, in the chapter of Sukshma Sharira, we're going to get into very deep detail about these things, about how exactly it is that the rishis were able to do with the knowledge, but we cannot. And there's a very good logical reason behind it as well. And usually people don't discuss it, but they just take it for granted, which is fine. But there's a very good reason why rishis were able to not experience, but directly acquire the knowledge, whereas we have to gain it through the shastras and through the unfolding of the parampara. A lot of people make the mistake that they consider themselves at the level of rishis, where they feel that, okay, let me go into dhyanam. I usually stress this point many times just so that people, if they miss one talk, they can like listen to the other one. But believe me, like, you cannot gain knowledge of the self as an experience sitting in meditation. That just does not work, because Pujya Swamiji says that the who is the person who enters meditation? The ignorant fellow. Who is the person who gets out of meditation? The ignorant fellow. Between entering and leaving, is there any knowledge that takes place? No, there's no knowledge. You can only gain knowledge through pramana, right? Pramana is a means of knowledge. So let's again recall what we covered today. We have the prameya, which is the object of knowledge, the prama, which is the knowledge, the pramanam, which is the means of knowledge, right? And the very self, which is the pramata, so the subject. Now you require these 4 things only when you have a distinction or duality between objects and subjects. So if I am an object, or if I'm a subject and there's an object, like let's say there's this marker. So the marker is an object, I am a subject, and there is knowledge that is connecting me to the object. The subject and the object are connected by the knowledge, but the knowledge itself requires a means of knowledge. Therefore, the means of knowledge are the eyes. I'm able to see the marker, and that becomes my means of knowledge. Now, the same thing applies for everything else that we experience in the world. But the only place where the difference is there is when the subject and the object are one, right? So, again, like to summarize things, self is the subject. Self is it an object? No, it's not an object. It is only the subject. And so, earlier I said that the self is the object because here you are as though treating it as an object to know, to learn, to experience. But it is not in truth an object. It is only the subject. And therefore, there is no longer any pramana, prameya, distinction, duality, or whatever between the subject and the subject. The subject is the subject, and therefore the self is consciousness. Consciousness can only be conscious of things that are there to be known. Consciousness cannot know itself, right? This is a very important thing to remember, that whenever you know something, you are knowing an attribute. You're knowing an attribute of it. When I know this pen, I know that it is blue. I'm knowing the color. I'm knowing that this part is black. I'm knowing the color. I know that it is so and so hard, and this is a thickness, and this is a whatever. The weight, it may weigh like 3 or 4 grams. So these things are to be known because I'm not actually knowing the substance. I am knowing the attributes, the qualities. It is the qualities that are making up my giving rise to this knowledge and this experience. But when the self is free of qualities, there is no way in which you can actually experience it. You can only experience qualities. If you look at the sky that's blue, you're not experiencing the sky. You're experiencing the blue color. But the self does not have a color. It does not have a particular weight or a temperature or any units. We'll talk about this in the Atma chapter. But the self cannot be known through any other means. It is, as Dilip says, it's nirguna. Shaguna means with attributes. Nirguna means without attributes. It's free of attributes. And therefore, the subject and the object are the same. And that is why the knowledge of the self cannot take place as a direct experience. This has become a very fashionable thing in neo-Vedanta cults, that somehow you have to have direct experience of the self. You have to have self-realization and meditation and so on. So these things need to be completely discarded. It is asampradayic. It is not supported by Shastra. It is not supported by the teachings of any authentic Acharya. If you go to the various Shankaracharyas, and if you go to Swami Dayananda and so on, they will dismiss this. In fact, I encourage you guys to go to YouTube today and type "experience is dumb," and then you will see Pujya Swamiji talking about it. How this experience hunting is dumb. It's a stupid pursuit because ultimately there's nothing that's gained from it. Experience can help you in your worldly transactions. It can help you understand the world. It can help you understand relationships between yourself and other people and the roles that you play. But when it comes to the knowledge of the self, experience can only support the conditioning program. It cannot give you the knowledge. So, this is something I wanted to close off on. Important note. And what time are we meeting next week?
Same 9:30.
We're not meeting next week. Remember, I told you like 3 weeks ago that next week there's a concert. So I have to. If you guys want to check it out, it's Shanti, and Shobha ji is also, actually, she's going to be, her husband Ishwar ji is going to be singing in the concert. So, round of applause for that. And I'm also going to be singing a couple of songs there. And so next week, the entire weekend will be busy with the concert events, and there's also a follow-up dinner, so we can't have it or a lunch, right? On Sunday, the following Sunday. So the next time we'll be meeting will be on, let me check the calendar, it'll be on 15th November. So, if you guys want to just revise, or if you guys want to meet without me also and just have a group discussion, that'll be fine. But otherwise, we'll meet on 15th, and we'll be discussing Bhakti Yoga. That'll be our 8th topic. Bhakti Yoga will mark the end of the dharmic topics, and after that we will enter the topics of Tattva Bodha. Tattva Bodha is going to be a very deep, a very meticulous unfolding of the entire teaching of Vedanta from beginning to end. So right now, I realize that I may have said some things which may not have yet been touched upon, but we will revise them again and again as we go forward. And by the end of all 16 sessions, I think it should be pretty firm. So on that note, I'll close off this broadcast, and I request you guys to just stay back for maybe 5 minutes, and we can discuss the way moving forward. What are some of the projects we can take up. So let's close off on that.
Prashant, by two things.
Yeah.
First of all, we'll need the recording of your concert. I mean, when you're singing.
When the composer Kanixji, if he gives the copyrights, then we can share samples of it. I think he'll give us a 15-minute promo of the video. The concert is going to be like an hour and a half or 2 hours long, but he's going to release a 15-minute promo. So I'll send that to you. My mother and I, we are both participating, and Ishwar uncle, Shobhaji's husband, he's also participating.
Okay. And next thing is for the revision. I have Swamiji's book with me. So would that be enough? For example, revising all those 7 lectures would be like 10 hours time it will take. So would that book be enough to recall all those things? I think it's there, or you are writing some write-up or short note?
No. So see, whatever I'm covering is like 90% of it is from Swami Paramārthānanda ji's teachings only, because I've heard his lectures and I'm basically putting the same things forward. And the only difference between this session, which is not a Shravanam, this is, that's why I'm stressing it again, that the actual Shravanam will be from the Guru, from Swami Paramārthānanda ji. This is more of a discussion that we are having. And this is just I'm giving forward my assimilation of the teaching, like what I've learned from it. So ultimately, once this is all over, I request you guys to go back and revise some Swami Paramārthānanda ji's talks. You'll find a lot of these things repetitive, because he's probably said the same things I'm saying, and he's probably said more things in a better way. So, but go back, revise, will be a good thing. And I can assure you that these 16 talks on Vedanta that are their introduction, they are the most comprehensive set of lectures I've ever heard in my life. Everything he has covered. Look at what we've gone through just in 7 talks. We've done Purusharthas, we've done Shastra, Varna, Ashrama, Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, Jnana Yoga, right? And then we'll be covering Bhakti Yoga in the next talk. And then we'll begin Tattvabodha, we'll do the Sadhana Chatushtaya, which we'll see more about the preparation. Shobhaji has put a link on the right side in case you guys want to see an excerpt of the concert. So you guys can click on that in the meantime. But yes, so Sadhana Chatushtaya will be done. Then we look at the 3 physical bodies, the 3 not physical, sorry, the 3 shariras, the physical, the subtle, and the causal. And then we'll be covering the Panchakoshas, the 5 different personalities that you have, and going into the topic of Atma, Tattvamasi, the Mahavakya. We'll go into the understanding of the whole Jagat, how it is formed, how it is manifested. We'll talk about science, we'll talk about the Big Bang, we'll talk about everything, the Mahavakyas and so on. And then we'll finally end with the laws of karma and how they work and they function. And then we'll have a summary talk. And then after this is done, I wanted your inputs on what are some of the topics that you feel that we can discuss in the future, so I can just write them down. At that point, we can jump more into a discussion format. So this is more like a storytelling format, right, where we are discussing what the Shastras are, and it's more mainly me talking. But moving forward, like, I thought if we can have more discussions and contributions from your end, then we can take one topic at a time, and then you can explain those topics, whoever wants to take that turn. So can you guys just give some ideas? I'll write it down. Okay, so Shobhaji says, addressing the misconceptions of Sanatana Dharma. Perfect. In fact, let me share something. This is good. Thank you for bringing. I'll show you something. Are you able to see my screen? This is something I'd written a long time ago for Chakra News and Advaita Academy. So we can have one session where we are discussing the different misunderstandings that are there. The first is that the self cannot be experienced, right? So we already covered that. Second is like, internet knowledge, why some of it can be dangerous, the things we find online. The third thing will be about finding a guru, like, how do you approach a guru, how do you find one? Then Mala Japa is not a substitute for gaining moksha. Shraddha, trust in the teaching and scriptures, that's mandatory. Respecting the tradition, purpose of meditation. There are not many gods. This is an essential point, because people say, oh, there's Hindus believe in one god, they believe in 33 crore gods, whatever. First of all, we dismiss the expression God itself in the first place. We talk about Ishvara. Ishvara is very different from the Abrahamic God. There's no comparison. And then understanding Vedanta as a means of knowledge, why Vedanta has to be treated as a pramanam. And then, understanding that different religions do not have the same goal, different yogas do not have the same result, Atma is not a part and property of Brahman, and so on. So there are so many misconceptions that we can all address, and we can probably have a lecture where we are just going through Q&A. So, see, Shobhaji put that on the side, that all paths lead to the same goal. Exactly, that is one misconception we need to cover. And Unnati, Smitaji, Gunjanji, any of you guys, would you like to put your ideas forward, please? Okay, wait, I forgot to stop the broadcast. Let me stop the broadcast. Stay tuned, just hold on. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.